So, Dimitri, where do you think we should start with all of this?
So we have to start with the beginning, and that's my kind of suggestion, I would say.
So, the beginning. It's a good idea. The beginning. In the beginning, things moved fast. We went from a neat idea that was discussed exclusively between Dimitri and I to pitching the idea all over the place, wanting to get our vision for an immersive course dedicated to the design process off the ground. Aurora, both as a school and a community, were very kind towards the idea, and the support was overwhelming. There's really no better way to illustrate the support involved than to mention the Aurora Schools Foundation, who donated a significant amount of capital for us to build an amazing design lab in Aurora High School. The Aurora PTO pitched in resources for one of the lab's Ultimaker 3D printers. The generosity and excitement were overwhelming. We began our formal to pitch in December of the previous year, and by the very next school year, we were in business. We were off and running. Things were good. Things were really good. But then, things became not so good.
Health officials are confirming a new case of the infection in California, a sign the virus is spreading.
For the first time in this country, the virus appears to have spread to this person without them having recently returned from a foreign country. Health officials here at the CDC have been greatly worried about these outbreaks.
Governor Mike DeWine announced the closure for all K through 12 schools beginning this Monday.
Pandemic? Check. Murder hornets hit the coast of the U.S. Check. No clue if, when, and how we are returning for the next school year? Check. On top of that, our newly minted district vision comes into play next year, and along with it, some corresponding design specifications for learning environments. With so much uncertainty right now, a single, visceral, and genuine question begs to be asked. What in the hell are we gonna do? Actually, things aren't that bad at all. You're here now, in the company of two leading experts, both of whom possess an amazingly deep knowledge and lasting skills in design, pedagogy, and technology.
No, you're not. Now you are. Now you're not. Can you hear me? I don't know. Awesome.
Good. Okay. All right.
Bad contact somewhere in the microphone, whatever.
It's bad contact right here.
Oh, okay.
An invitation to collaborate has to come with transparency, and there is relevant context to be gained in us sharing some of our ongoing conversations. Our conversations lay the foundation for our work, so here are some highlights from ours. I was just looking through our notes, and we were talking about the importance of a learning environment being joyful.
Yeah, we can beat that skill into them, but that's not the most effective way.
Right,
It
exactly.
work, but it's, yeah. Remember that issue of control that a lot of teachers consider school environment of being teachers controlling students, because students are always destructive force and teachers are always constructive force. But that's, again, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
We should be partners. It's one of the visions and specifications, being partners, relationship, right? And
it's like school being done to or at a young person versus with a young person.
Right. Language, actually, yeah, even tiny things like that, changing a little word or preposition or something might change the whole idea or the whole feeling of the environment that we try to create. Teaching, the word teaching should be avoided as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because teaching is the act from the teacher. That's what it is. And that's not what learning is. Learning is the result in the student. So we're talking about two different places where we put emphasis on. It's kind of
And I think when we talk about being designers more so than teachers, it really ups the ante on the word choice, right? And what exactly do we mean when we say learning? We want student learning, you know? Is it a
Yeah.
very temporal assimilation of stuff and things that we test for in a snapshot of time, and then they forget and we move on? Is that learning? Okay.
Yeah.
I really like what you said about that idea of rather than teaching, like how do I teach empathy? Or
Right.
how
Right.
do I teach a kid how to ask questions? It's
Uh-huh.
more about how do we design an environment where those things can be discovered, right?
Right. Yes. Well, there is another aspect to this concept of designer versus teacher. That is, when we design, at least it gives us opportunity to be flexible, to be sometimes changing things from time to time, right?
Right.
When we teach, we just focus on the material, and then almost does not matter how we do it, essentially. But when we design, we might try something like prototyping environment, and then we might discover, oh, wait a minute, that thing could be done in different way. Let me try a different way. And we can rearrange the environment slightly and see what works better. Because I always had an impression when I was taking those educational courses to get my license, right? I always had an impression that each teacher has a set of kind of routines, set of kind of tricks how to teach, and they do it year after year, class after class, no matter what. And it's too rigid. It's too kind of, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't adjust to the environment, and I always didn't like it, never liked it.
You're also adjusting those situations as needed in the moment, and it's
Exactly.
not as regimented, right?
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah. Not fixed regimen. It should be flexible adjustment.
We've had a lot of discussions about the importance of knowing how to interrogate the world around us, right?
Oh, I
Knowing
love
how,
that phrase. Write it down. No, I don't know you're recording the video, but I really love that phrase. Interrogate the world around us. That's the awesome phrase.
I've done a lot of walking where people aren't, and there's that memorial on Kent State's University where the May 4th memorial where the student shooting happened.
Yeah.
And they've got this really beautiful patio, and there's flowers that were in bloom when I was there, but they had these three words sort of like engraved um, in the decorative stonework there. I think that sort of embodies, what we're talking about. This process of learning as we're defining it starts with questioning, right?
Yes. I think it has to be very beginning. It has to be from the starting point. In terms of class environment, it could be the first minute of the class should be already addressed, because when we learn something, we always start with a question. I have a question first. I want to know what the meaning of this new word in English is, or what claim, how credible the claim is that, I don't know, Earth is flat or something like that, right? And then I start digging as attempt to answer that question. So question usually should be in the beginning, in my opinion.
I like those resources that you sent me regarding that question formulation technique.
Mm-hmm.
You sent there's a couple of PDFs, I think. One was a little shorter, one was a little longer.
Right, right. I think it's from some universities that implemented it or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's more of like, what kind of situations are we going to design where young people can get good at asking questions, right?
Right, right. It's like those open and closed questions, and sometimes if you try to teach kids how to ask right questions, I'm pretty sure very quickly they will decide, okay, open questions are always better than closed questions.
Right.
And I will only ask open questions from now on, and I will get my A. Again, we're rolling back into that kind of rigid, kind of one scenario fits all situation, which is not good.
You and I could start coming up with a list of questions. And I think even when we create the situation, one of the things that I see in the documentation a lot is this idea of rules. Here's the rules for the question formulation technique, you know?
Yes.
That just doesn't sit well with me. Like it's like when you say rule, it sounds like a paint by number, do as I say kind of thing.
Right.
And
right,
maybe that's just a personal proclivity of mine, a hang up, but
the world rule is very, very intimidating. Yeah.
I
It
like
should
the
be
idea of,
slightly different.
yeah. So like, I don't know, like maybe we call them agreements. Like we're going to agree to do these things.
So again, it's mutual, right? Rule is one way road.
Right.
Agreement is two-way road. So yeah, it has to be two-way.
Yeah, I think there's values in what those rules are stating. Like I think one of the first
absolutely,
is come up with as many questions as you can. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good, I mean, you just come up with as many. And don't stop to talk or judge a question in the moment. You just do the question.
Analyze deeply while you're writing. Yes.
You can see everything on my screen, right, Dimitri?
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Like I know that the process requires a question focus that itself is not a question, right?
Right. It's a statement, picture, situation, anything.
I'm going to type it and then I guess we can talk about it because it's going to take me a second to actually type because I'm horrible at this. To be joyful while fully honoring the district vision. How does that?
No, I like the previous. To me, while means a little bit of but, kind of like it could be joy. To me, it's the same thing, but while emphasizes difference.
So get rid of while and put in a comma.
Yeah, just like this. Yeah, that's much better.
Our goal is to
okay.
Start the next school year in a way.
That's better.
You think so?
Yep, that's good.
So I think the next step in this process is just banging out as many questions as possible. I'll just start putting out some questions and then you and I will go back and forth.
Okay.
What is meant by learning?
How will it look in face-to-face versus virtual environment?
What is meant by joyful?
How young people will realize or discover that they are in joyful environment?
What is the very first situation we design for our young people?
What to do if my concept of joyful is different from students? How about this? Should I start new designing right away or gradually morph from my traditional ways?
And somewhere in this process, we go through and we mark everything with like an O or a C, right? And you know what I'll do is
in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll use a different color for these, I think.
Okay.
I'll try that.
Because you have to describe what it's meant, and that's open-ended.
Yeah.
How we'll realize. That's probably more open than closed, right?
Oh,
you cannot answer it with one word.
Yeah. Open. Okay.
Are our young people ready? Well, they're ready or not, right? So it's
closed. That's closed.
Or converging.
Right. Yep.
One answer.
I think one of the things just to get us playing with this is so we take an open question, make it closed, and make it open. Is that the idea?
Yes. So after each question, like start a new line after.
Right. What is meant by joyful? That's an open question. But then if I were to come in and say, can we accurately define joyful? That becomes a closed question.
Closed question, yeah.
how would we take a closed question like number 6 and make that open?
That's a little bit more difficult, at least for this particular question. How do we know
Yeah.
that our young people ready? Something like that, or we discover, yeah.
And that's very much a more open-ended question.
Yeah. By the way, I think that there are different ways of converting closed question into open-ended. The same question could be converted in different ways. Again, the same question, are our young people ready? And so that's a closed question. We convert it into open by saying, how do we discover? But we can ask another open question based on that original question.
I think I know what you're saying, though. So it would be something like, how do we help young people
Here we go. Yeah.
who are not ready for
Yes.
this type of learning environment adapt?
Yes. Yes. Very much practical from my personal experience.
Yeah, and it's also very open too. And we had 2 really good questions, open questions that came from that closed question.
Yeah. And on the same topic, like when we were converting open question to the closed one, question number 3, we can also do it in different ways. We can ask several different closed questions based on that open question. For example, is it necessary for the learning environment to be joyful? Something like that.
Oh, that's really cool. And then that ends up being also a convergent or closed question.
Right. The point of exercising different follow-up questions based on one particular question is basically an illustration that you can go in different directions when you are analyzing your original questions.
I noticed that, like when we were converting open to closed and closed to open, those other questions that we were coming up with were good questions, and they add another dimension to the thing that we're questioning.
Exactly.
Which was kind of cool.
It is cool. It shows clearly that you can expand even after original task of writing as many questions as you possibly can. You might feel a little bit exhausted on questions, but then you start analyzing and you see, oh, wait a minute, this question can generate 5 more if I really start thinking about it.
When we talk about knowing how to learn, as opposed to just being good at knowing how to be taught.
Right.
I can be good at knowing how to be taught, and that's so passive, right? All I have to do is be programmable and compliant.
Yeah.
See, but to actually know how to learn, I need to ask my own questions, right? And so often in a school environment, it's all about adults asking young people questions, and it's their job to answer. Right? We've made an art form out of that.
A plethora of resources out there for teachers, like question banks.
Right. Yeah.
We literally made it an industry of teachers asking questions, while it should be students who are asking questions because they are the learners.
Yeah. So maybe we can take a look at this and prioritize. You pick a top question. I'll pick a top question, and then we'll arrive at our 4 top prioritized questions. And I will secretly write down the number of the 2 that are most important to me. And okay, you do the same.
I will keep it in mind. So I will tell you later. Give me a second. I will need to reread them. And by the way, we can choose from questions, not necessarily original questions, but also converted questions.
It was, I'll be honest with you, this was harder than I thought it was going to be.
I know, yeah, I know.
So the ones that I was...
Especially when we limit ourselves to 1 or 2, right? It's difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
What 2 did you come up with?
I came up with number 5 and number 9.
5 and 9. I definitely took a hard look at those. I went with 10 and 12.
Kind of complementing each other slightly. Okay, that's good. Not
For
slightly.
sure. we've gone through the process of coming up with questions that are important to us from a question focus that we developed, prioritizing those questions, playing with those questions, going from open to close, close to open. And I guess our whole introductory video is just an invitation to come play with us, right?
Yeah, it is a play.
Yeah.
We're exploring, we are learning too. And
yeah,
it's one of the ways. Asking questions and sorting them and analyzing them, playing with them is very important for learning, in my opinion.
You and I are going to be doing a lot of work, a lot of designing, a lot of collaboration in the weeks ahead, all throughout summer. And if anything, we're just inviting people to come along for the ride. I mean, if you're also finding yourself in a place where, the challenge of redesigning our craft is severe. I mean, it's a huge challenge, and the more minds, the merrier, I would say.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And two minds are quadruple the power comparing to one mind. It's not linear even. Collective knowledge is powerful.